Hey guys, this edition of the Wrestling Perspective, hosted by Eli Drake and myself, Dennis Farrell, is brought to you by Blue Chew. Go to BlueChew.com, use the promo code Perspective. You get your first order for free. You just pay $5 shipping and handling. Find out why a little bit later in this episode. Honestly, we don't care if you use it or don't use it. We'd love you to use it. Make your spouse happy, make us happy. But go there, use the promo code, keep the show going. Also, it's brought to you by Fightful.com. They've been breaking news over at Fightful for the last 3 years, and now they've launched a premium service, Fightful Select. Fightful Select brings you dozens of podcasts each month from 205 Live, NXT, NXT UK, Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan, NWA, AEW, Q&A shows, alternative and dark match commentary, and tons of breaking news. Go over to Fightful, check them out. We love them, proud supporter. And now, it's time for the Wrestling Perspective with
Eli Drake. That is just a fact of life.
All right, it's time for episode number 3, The Wrestling Perspective. I'm Dennis Farrell, and my new co-host. I guess after 3 episodes, it's no longer new, right?
I don't know. See, I feel like you got maybe a padding of maybe 10 episodes or so to still call me new. I mean, some people might not be aware, still might not have tuned in. Then they come back, they're like, oh, I've been listening to this in a while. Oh, wait a minute, when did this happen? And it's new to them.
Wow, Petey Williams is starting to sound like Eli Drake.
Oh boy,
that's what they're saying, because if they're tuning in now, they're like, "Wow, is that PD? Sounds different," but it's not anymore. It's Eli Drake.
Well, that's why they need to know it's new.
New. So what's up? What's new with you in the world of Eli Drake and professional wrestling? Before we jump into the shenanigans.
Not in professional wrestling. I'm sitting in a new apartment in the same building as where I live, looking at a actually very beautiful view, but there was flooding behind my wall in both of my bathrooms, so they had to move me to another apartment down the hall for the next 2 to 3 weeks while they fixed that. So my apartment's basically being ripped apart, and I'm out of my home. But they had a pretty nice little furnished setup for me down here, so it's not so bad. I'm headed to North Carolina this weekend to face one-on-one with Mr. Ken Anderson. That should be an interesting altercation. And of course, we got Atlanta coming up next week, so I'm looking forward to that. Got a little bit of ring time in last night to just kind of move around and make sure my win's still there. And that's pretty much the essential rundown at this point.
Now, do you cut down on independent bookings now just because of where you are and where you're working, or is it still business as usual? I'm doing all my bookings now through NWA. So everybody take note of that. If you want to book me, you got to talk to Billy or Lagana, Lightning One, NWA. You got to talk to those guys and book me through there. Otherwise, at this point, like this booking for this weekend was one of the last ones that I booked before I signed with the NWA. So, I honored all my bookings that I made before then. And at this point, if they book me, they book me. And if they don't, I still get paid the same either way. So I'm good to go. That's interesting, since this is going to be kind of an NWA heavy show. A lot of people are asking a lot of questions. It's kind of like, I guess I would start with, do you have any input into the Eli Drake character? Because one of the things I get on PD about was his character. As much as I'm good friends with him and I love him to death, he was Petey Williams, the Canadian Destroyer, for so long. I think there was a brief stint there where he went the little Petey Pump. But Eli Drake, is there any evolution in that character coming up?
Well, I think that the way that the NWA does their content, as far as shooting the more settled down interview styles and stuff like that, as far as like, they've come into my apartment and we've done like question and answer kind of stuff. It's more showing you who the person is in a sense. You're getting a taste of the character, but you're also getting a taste of the person. So the evolution is kind of in an organic sense of like, here's the man. Take away all the BS, take away all the showmanship, and here is the man himself. And then when it's time to turn it up and turn those cameras on and turn a microphone on and get out in front of an audience, then you get the real deal. But aside from that, as far as the actual evolution of what I'm doing, what I'm saying, obviously that's going to be story driven to some degree, but a lot of that is largely up to me. I mean, if you look at anybody who's really done any kind of real evolution of the character, unless somebody was doing major, hey, this isn't working, let's breathe some new life into this, then otherwise, for the most part, I mean, look at Matt Hardy. That whole broken Hardy gimmick, that was all his idea. That was all his creation. And not like he hadn't had success for a long time before that. Even if you look at a guy like The Rock, for instance, I would say that there's an enormous difference between 1998, 1999 Rock to like 2001, 2002, 2003 Rock. And then if you go beyond that, I think the delivery styles and all that kind of stuff are different. The in-ring for the most part is the same, but the character itself is different in a sense. So some of that stuff's on to me, and, leaving certain things behind, adding new things. You never know.
Do you get bored with playing? And I guess bored may not be the right word, or phoning it in may not be the right word. But is there ever a period where you kind of get out there and you get on the mic and you're just like, oh, man, I need to do something different. What am I going to do now? Something like that?
Oh, yeah. I felt really stale coming up through this past, I'd say fall, winter, springtime. Like I just felt stale. And I felt like I needed a big change. And like, I was looking at really drastic changes and stuff like that. So I don't know that going drastic changes is really the answer. I think little subtle changes and whatnot are really kind of the thing. But some of that's just not being lazy and not falling back on what works and taking chances on new stuff that might or might not work. Because half the things that I've found that have worked in the past weren't things that I knew were going to work. It just kind of, they accidentally caught on. So you got to try stuff.
Do you see yourself bringing the whole dummy thing? And if I ask too much, just say, hey, next question. But are you bringing? Because I got a lot of people like, ask Eli if he's going to do the dummy thing in NWA.
Well, my only curiosity at this point is if people feel like this is too much of the Eli Drake question and answer show. But
it's
hey,
not.
I don't mind.
But people want to know about you. I think here's the thing. Here's the thing about you, Eli, and I think you are kind of guarded. When I hear interviews and when I see you do things, when you do them, by the way, you're open about the business, but you're not really open about you.
Well, that's the story of my life. that's my life in a nutshell. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you to go back to the dummy thing, I don't know. I had kind of soured on that a while back. I'd kind of tried to distance myself a little bit from it, but it was just, okay, I'll hold on to it. I'll keep it in my back pocket, but I don't want to lean on it.
Okay, that makes sense, because I as I said, it's not a secret how much of a fan I was of yours, and I really felt like the dummy
that's past tense.
Well, now we're like almost friends. We're budding a friendship, so I'm moving from fan to friend. We're keeping it in the F's, you see.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah, but I thought that dummy thing towards the end of the TNA run was still good. But the other talent, it was hard for them to get that over. Does that make sense?
What do you mean for the other talent to get it over?
So it's almost like when you hear a catchphrase 1,000 times and then you go out there and you use it and it's the right moment, the right context, and it's almost like the other guy rolls his eyes, and it's not necessarily they're trying to bury you, but it's like, all right, you've called me a dummy already. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess, I mean, in a sense, I guess you could do that with anything. But I mean, that's kind of, in a way, that's almost where you need more production, more direction from production, I would say, in a sense. I mean, at the same time, I guess you could say just let the boys go out there and do their thing. But I would think, depending on who's what, like if I'm the heel and I'm saying that and the babyface rolls their eyes, that's fine. If I'm the babyface and the heel rolls their eyes, that could be fine, but that could also go off the wrong way to where, the heel maybe should be a little bit more perturbed by it. Maybe a little bit more upset by it. But if you're good enough and you can work on the fly and you can react off of what the other person's doing, I mean, for instance, I'm going to use an old example, but, way back in like 2000 or something like that, what was it? It was The Rock and Triple H. And The Rock comes out, it's cutting his promo, whatever. And Triple H just stops him in his tracks and it's just like, oh, there's a lady in the back who it was something about like he was wearing a blouse from some lady in the back or whatever because of his ridiculous shirts that he used to wear. And it's like that could kill a guy who's not good at being quick on his feet and doesn't have somewhere to go. But if you're witty and you've got somewhere to go with that, the heel can do that kind of stuff and react more naturally or normally how somebody might act and say something back to you, and you can still come back and crush them. But that kind of depends on knowing who you're out there with.
That makes sense, and that's very insightful. Do you think you could see yourself being a backstage agent or doing some sort of booking?
Well, I actually did do a little bit of agenting for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood a while back and Championship Wrestling from Arizona. I think eventually my schedule just got a little too busy and it kind of fell off. But I did some producing for a while, and I can remember even without naming names, there were a couple times at Impact where I ended up kind of accidentally, just because I was there, kind of in a way kind of producing promos. Like the promo was already set up as far as like how they wanted it to go, where they wanted to go and stuff like that. But like I would sit there and listen to the guy, do 1 take, 2 takes, 3 takes. And especially if they were cutting a promo on me, maybe they'd struggle with the go home line. I'd be like, well, hold on. I'd be like, well, I said this earlier, so why don't you use that and say blah, blah, blah. And they'd think about it, work it in. They're like, oh, hell yeah, that works really well. So yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't be against seeing that happen again somewhere down the line as far as producing stuff like that, because I think I've actually kind of taken a big interest in that, even when it wasn't even my own stuff, because I've always got so many notes for even the backstage interviewers. Like I see a lot of the things that backstage interviewers do that really irk me and come off as kind of robotic. And so like Mackenzie Mitchell can probably speak to this so many times. I would come back to her and I'd just be like, energy, give me energy. Even when I wasn't even in there, it was her interviewing somebody else. I'd be like, just give me energy, be excited about what you're telling me, because you're the first thing that people are seeing when they come back from commercial or whatever it is. And also like, it's little notes, like with the backstage interviewers, you don't have to introduce yourself every time that it comes back. Hopefully they've already seen you. And for the most part, nobody cares about you. They care about the talent you're talking to. And little things like the backstage interviewers are always be like, what are your thoughts? That's the most generic, awful question ever. And honestly, I can't ever remember somebody like, for instance, Mean Gene Okerlund ever saying, what are your thoughts? Mean Gene would come and tell you, basically, he's telling the wrestler, but he's also telling the audience what has happened, what's going to happen, and basically kind of just sets the stage and then just kind of, puts the microphone in front of them. Sometimes there's a question, but a lot of times it's just setting the table and boom, now it's your time to talk.
I'm brutally honest with myself when I've always said I wanted to get into the wrestling industry, and it was never to be a wrestler because, look, I'm 5'9", chubby. I'm not athletic. But
Let's get you in a pair of trunks here. Come on.
You don't want that, Eli.
I don't want that. You're right.
No, not at all. Even if you and I were friends, although I will say this on the quick side note, you and I have one thing in common now because Petey was at my house probably 2 weeks ago, and it took a lot of badgering, but I finally convinced him to give me the Canadian Destroyer into the pool.
Oh boy. That sounds like an awful idea.
It could have been. So, and let me set this up for you because you've seen me and you've seen him. You've wrestled him.
Yeah.
And my biggest worry is because when he was teaching me how to do it, it's all up to me. And by the way, once again, not athletic. So I'm at the very edge of the pool, and my biggest worry wasn't so much to rotate it, was just to push off far enough where if I screwed it up, I wasn't going to kill us both.
That was my first thought.
See, thank you, because I know he's always talks about how he's never hurt anybody with that move, but it's still kind of a scary move to think about taking here.
Well, yeah, see, I'd never done a backflip in my life at that point, and essentially doing that as a backflip. And although I can now say I can do a backflip, I just recently started doing it. I've done I think I wrestled in San Antonio recently and did a standing moonsault. I'm 36 and I've never been able to do a backflip until now. It's ridiculous. Regardless, yeah, it's kind of daunting to consider, but I mean, I don't know. You just think about the momentum. He's carrying you the other way too, so that kind of helps. But yeah, I mean, as long as you just commit to it, you should be fine.
There are maybe three things I can point to, and before we go back to whatever I even forgot we were talking about, I can point to where I said I've had my fingerprints on that. It was Killer Cross's finishing move, where I helped name that, which was pretty cool for me. It was during the PD Killer Cross match. I'm sitting there while they were doing their thing in their ring practicing, and they're like, "Hey, does this look real?" I'm like, "No." But what if you tried to give him the Canadian Destroyer but couldn't because he beat you up so bad and he was just messing with you? And they went on to use that. And the other one, which I was super proud of, was when he found out he was going to wrestle you, and he was kind of looking for that one memorable thing to put on the match where he's like, look, Eli's going to beat me. They're not going to give me the belt, but I want this to be something that might stand out in a few years from now. And I convinced him to let you kick out of the Canadian Destroyer.
Oh, really? You convinced him?
I convinced, and it wasn't that hard. It wasn't like I was like, you got to do it. But I said, here's the deal. You're up there in age. Eli's a champion. No one's ever kicked out. What if he does? I mean, you hit it. People think you just won the match. They're going crazy, and he kicks out. What better false finish than the biggest match in your career than that?
And let me just say, I love Josh, but he made me crazy when I watched it because Petey hit the move, and then Josh said, nobody's ever kicked out of the Canadian Destroyer, which is telling everyone at home I'm about to kick out. Shouldn't have said that until after I kicked out.
That was Petey's biggest complaint too.
That drove me crazy. But anyway, but yeah, I was super grateful to Petey for doing that because I'm really protective of my finishes. I know a lot of guys will whore out their finishes and use them as false finishes, but to me, that's what makes a finish special. That's why people pop when Austin grabs the for the stunner, or Triple H would go for the pedigree. Now Triple H lets everybody kick out of it, but for so long it was definitively a finisher. Or when The Rock grabs the rock bottom, or Undertaker gets his tombstone, or whatever. That's the finish. Now, if it's like a very rare occurrence, if it's like a big time crazy title match at like your biggest show of the year, okay, you can get away with it a couple times. But it seems like now it's like every guy at every stage of the show, whether it's mid-card, upper, whatever, they're letting everybody kick out of their finisher. And so they're giving their finisher no meaning whatsoever. And this might not mean anything to anybody, but to me, my finisher there for the last year or so started to get a reaction when I grabbed it because people knew if I hit it, that was going to be it. And I hearkened to what the New York video that I just put up from Bound for Glory, where I hit What's his face with it? No chin.
Ellsworth. James
Ellsworth. I'm sorry about that, Jimmy. But I hit him with the deal, and it was like as soon as I hit it, it was like, even though the people were really hating him in that moment, but it was like I hit it, and then they started chanting the name of the move, and it's because, in my mind anyway, because I protected it for so long, I never ever let anybody kick out of it. I think the only person I ever let kick out of it was Tommy Dreamer, because he convinced me to, and because I was going to do something crazier. But other than that, of all the time, no one ever would kick out of it. And so for him to let me kick out of it, to me, that meant a lot, because that's huge. And he kind of explained it the exact same way you said to me, which was, I'm the champion. He knows they weren't going to put the belt on him, or, he was going to be kind of used sparingly. And so it was like, well, let's give him a moment. And I'm like, okay, cool. I appreciate that.
Now, knowing me, and I'm one of these guys, not just because I get bored with something, I'll go in and rearrange my studio, or I'll move things around. And especially like I just broke out my old Nintendo 64 and I started playing WWE No Mercy, right? And I'll create a guy and I'll go in and get bored and recreate a guy and do different things. Now, as a pro wrestler, do you kind of have that same itch where you keep tinkering with yourself? Are you one of those guys that once you get right, you're happy, you'll write it? Because if it was me, I'd change my finishing move once every year or something, just because I might get bored.
I do want something more simple. The only problem is with doing something simple is that, you walk the line of like, smart marks would be like, oh, like, how's that a finisher? You need something bigger. But then also it's like, if you're doing something that's so convoluted, it just looks stupid. I see guys doing things that just don't make any, like, you're doing things that are complete waste of movement, where you could have just grabbed the ultimate, like somebody will like pick somebody up and toss them into something where it's like, you could have already just grabbed them in that move already. You didn't even have to do the first part of that. And it's like, it's just overcomplicating things just for the sake of the visual, which I get, but it still has to, that visual still has to make sense in some way. But like the stunner is a great example. You can do that to anyone. It's very simple, but I feel like if anybody did that now, remove the fact that Stone Cold Steve Austin did it. If somebody just did it, nobody had ever done it before, most people would be like, how's that a finisher? I don't get it. Or the rock bottom, or the people's elbow, or Hogan's leg drop. Even maybe the pedigree. It's just very, very simple moves that can be done to absolutely anyone. It doesn't matter your size. And that's the tough thing with when I look at the gravy train, I'm like, well, damn, how do I can't do that to a 450-pound guy. I might be able to, but it's going to be tough to, like, I could squat a 450-pound guy, but am I going to be able to bend over and essentially, because it's not a squat at that point. It's almost like a stiff-legged deadlift. It's not going to happen. So I do always kind of rack my brain for stuff like that, where it's like, what kind of a finisher can I do that's something simple, impactful, quick, effective, and can be done to anybody. And that's why I know, again, I like the stunner, pedigree, rock bottom, because, again, anybody can take those moves.
Do you think, maybe you're hinting, maybe I'm digging, we could see a new finisher in NWA?
You never know. We'll see what happens, but no promises.
Well played, Eli. At least you don't do the PD thing where PD's like, well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you could, I guess. And at least you cut like 30 seconds off the show. PD will him and ha and ride that fence to the finish line, and you're still like, what did he say?
PD's going to be hot at you if you keep ragging on him like this.
He was in my poll last week. He can come find me. He knows where I live. He probably doesn't even listen. I'll tell him, hey, Pete, if you listen, I'll give you $100 right now.
I mean, it's probably accurate, though, because, I mean, I feel like most of the guys that I know, like, if they're not on something, they're probably not watching it or listening to it.
Even most people don't even listen back to their own stuff. Let's be honest. I mean, you just did it. Why listen back? I'm kind of a nerd where I go back and I'll listen again just to be like, oh, I stumbled over that word, or I could have made that joke a little. I like take notes like a Monday morning quarterback.
Well,
I know.
I mean, I see. I don't know. I just don't take it like last night. Okay, so last night was NXT debuted on USA. Didn't see any of it. Don't know anything about it. But I'm in a group chat with a bunch of guys. So of course we were talking about.
How are you?
Screw it, who cares? I'm in a group chat with Moose, Eddie Edwards, Matt Sydal, and Trevor Lee. So of course we're all very congratulatory to Trevor, Cameron Grimes, excuse me. It was cool because now it's like one of our boys who really wasn't, I don't think, getting his due at Impact, gets to go out there and pretty much do his thing in very convincing fashion on USA. So it's cool, but I didn't see it. so I don't know anything about it. I don't know AEW is going to come on in a couple weeks. Probably won't see it. I might check in for a minute, or at least I might check in to see like the highlights or something on YouTube. We'll find out. And I've got a bunch of friends on that too. So it's just like, I don't know. It's just taking in wrestling that I'm not on is damn near painful.
I see this. I wish I could tell you what blows my mind. And at times it kind of does, but I 100% understand it. But you're a nerd like I am, a wrestling nerd. We grew up loving it. And I don't care how cool you want to make yourself sound, Eli. You're a nerd. Let's not lie to ourselves here.
Oh, I'm not above saying that there are definitely nerdy tendencies to me. I'm like a hybrid, like jock nerd hybrid, because there's a little bit of both of those in me. Hell, I played in the drum line in high school, but I also played sports. I also played video games. I did all that stuff. When a new Star Wars movie comes out, my ass is sitting there watching it. So there's all those elements. So you can't call me a complete nerd, okay? I'm a hybrid. How about that?
Oh, call yourself what you will, but what I see, and I've hinted around this, and I don't think I've quite come out and asked it. I'm going to do it right now. Well, honestly, what would it take for a wrestling organization, not religiously make you start watching again, and maybe even some of the old stuff, but what would it take to get you to start watching something again, whether it's just one match or Trevor Lee? I mean, if he would have texted you and said, "Hey, will you watch tonight?" Would you have watched?
Well, yeah. If somebody would have asked me outright like that, then and they're a friend of mine, then yeah, probably would have. I'd have definitely made it a point to take that in, but I don't know. Like I don't sit and watch much of anything anymore. Like I don't watch a lot of TV shows. I'm the guy who, if you ask, "Hey, have you seen this movie?" Chances are I probably haven't seen it. I'm very much of the new generation in a certain sense of like, I catch things on my phone. There's a lot of YouTube. When I lay down on my bed, I've got a Roku on my TV. It's mostly YouTube. It's just little snippets of stuff. A lot of times I'm a big like infotainment guy. Like I like to get information with a little side of entertainment. So like I like to watch like the late night shows. So you get a little bit of the news with some comedy. But then again, sometimes I like to just get straight up information stuff. I'll watch videos about stock trading or whatever. Something that I feel like is going to enrich either my brain or my pocketbook or both. And sometimes just entertain me. But I don't know, wrestling, old wrestling, I'll go back and watch. I don't watch it like super regularly, but I mean, like sometimes I'll get a kick where I'll watch old wrestling for maybe like, a few days in one straight week or whatever. But then for the most part, I won't see it again for another few months.
All right.
I am so out of the loop. I think I've just been... Wrestling's been like my abusive girlfriend. I'm in love with her, but she's kind of a jerk. I've been kind of a jerk to her as well. And we just, we see each other when we can.
Well played. I wish I had something to follow up with that, but that's a pretty good comeback. Let me ask you this now. A few weeks ago, we were talking, and you kind of said you gave WWE the blue ball. So I had the fan ask me a question to ask you, and the question.
Oh yeah. I thought you meant this year. I was like, no. Yeah. You're right. Go on.
The question is, after seeing, which you probably didn't see, but how about hearing? Let's change it to that. How some TNA talent has been used in the WWE. Did that give you hesitation not to contact them back?
No, because I that's really case by case. I know a lot of people talk about, and maybe it's true that, Vince loves to create his own entities and create his own things. And so he's kind of hesitant to bring in other guys, but Impact TNA was never a blip on their radar. It was never a real competitor whatsoever. And WCW was. And look at how many guys came out of WCW and were successful in the WWE. So if that really stood to reason, that it was out of some spite for TNA, which is complete BS, then you wouldn't have Stone Cold Steve Austin. You wouldn't have Chris Jericho, and any other number of guys. The success of Eddie Guerrero before his passing. All of these guys who were WCW essentially born and bred, and WCW was much more of a spiteful competitor and much more of a close competitor than TNA or Impact ever dreamed of being. So I don't buy that it's any kind of spiteful thing or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of at some point they didn't fill whatever role that they were looking for at the time. So, and that's not to say that their talent wasn't up to par or anything like that, but if they're looking for X role and you give them Y role, it's not going to work. So no, I think at that point it's a matter of wherever I go, I have to trust in myself, my abilities to prove people wrong, but also my abilities to just perform to my highest ability. When I went to Impact, nobody was looking for me to be the guy. I was the third guy in a group of three in the Rising. Nobody. I wasn't supposed to be the standout guy in the group. It was just a matter that I pushed and made it that way. So I don't think it matters where I go, and I see that stuff all the time on Twitter, and I completely ignore it. Thank you all for coming in and talking to me, but this whole thing with but WWE is going to misuse you, maybe, but everywhere I've gone has misused me at some point, and then I've made them. I've had to knock on the door, and be like, "Hey guys, how about this now?" And then I end up getting put in the right place.
And let's be honest. There's a big difference, and that's not a knock on any company, but it's being misused for Impact money and being misused for WWE money. Completely different scenario, too.
Well, that depends on where you are, I guess. If you're being misused in the Performance Center, that's not great money. But if you're being misused on the main roster, then yeah, you're talking a completely different thing. Although at the same time, here's the thing that I know that most of the guys are thinking about, and this is one of the things that I was always thinking about, whether I was at Impact or anywhere else, is it's great to be getting paid whatever money you're getting paid, and a lot of people be like, well, maybe you're not where you want to be, but at least you're getting paid the money. And in a certain way, they're right. But at the same time, they're wrong, because if you're not getting used a particular way, that means now that the next time it comes time to negotiate your next contract, now they have reason to say, well, we haven't really been getting too much out of you, so we need to cut your pay, or we can't pay you as much this time around, or we can't give you that raise you want, or whatever it is. So that's why guys want to be used in a higher position, not just for like glory or fame or any of that crap. It's so that now the next time around when I get to negotiate my contract, I'm not going to get cut, or I'm going to get more.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you this. This was a question we got earlier last week.
Or on top of that, I'm sorry, you're also more valuable to other companies as well, because that's the other thing is there is a certain level of perception. Whereas, like, if this company isn't going to use me in any kind of meaningful way, then why would any other company want to use me? I mean, there is the potential now that they could also look at that person and be like, oh, well, you know what? They have something, even though this company isn't using that, they have something. But you're much more likely to be in that position and in that desirable position of potential if you're being booked in that manner.
This was a question from last week, by the way. You guys started on the question. Eli went off on a rant, but how much how much NWA history did you have to learn after signing with them?
What kind of question is that? Did I have to learn? Nobody like.
Well, I didn't ask it. I'm just don't shoot the messenger.
No, I know. What a ridiculous question. Like they're like, all right, now here's this book. It's 3,000 pages. Need you to finish it by August 30th.
There'll be a test.
Yeah, or like what was that, Clockwork Orange or something, where they had the guy's eyes stuck open to watch all the stuff? No, it's not a thing. Like I grew up watching NWA. I watched everything. I took in every wrestling when I was a kid. So like. It's really weird because I see a lot of this type of stuff. People, sometimes I'll hang out with Buddy Murphy or like occasionally I'll interact with Braun Strowman because we were pretty tight when I was at the Performance Center or anybody in any other company, Scorpio Sky, whatever. But it seems specifically with WWE, people be like, oh, you're allowed to talk to people outside of Impact? Vince isn't going to like that. It's like, it's not, it doesn't work like that. And this feels like along the same lines of like, oh, you signed with the NWA? Okay, well, I guess they probably gave you like a history book so that you could, figure out all the they signed me. They're like, hey, would you like to come in and work for this amount of money? Sure, I would. Okay, cool. Sign here. Here are your dates. That's about it. All right. There's no syllabus. Nobody's coming in and hey, you need to know. We're gonna give you a 10-page history test on the NWA. Be ready. Pop quizzes will come up on the way. It's just not a thing.
That, to me, that's interesting, too, because here's the one thing about growing up a wrestling fan I totally missed out on, and I'm a little bummed out about is I was never part of the tape trading community. I didn't even know it existed. I don't think I found dirt sheets until, like, the NWO was around. But I'm kind of like you. I watched it, and that was whatever was on TV was what I watched. And then if I watched something else and someone showed up there, I was a naive kid. I was like, what are the Road Warriors doing there? Oh my God. Were you part of those communities?
What, the tape traders?
Yeah.
No, I remember the first time I ever even knew that was a thing. I had already like been in the business for probably a few months. And one of the guys that I was living with like had all these tapes, and he was basically telling me about this whole tape trade thing. And I was like, "What the hell is this? A bunch of nerds?" I don't know, but but everything he was watching was like from Japan and some other stuff that I'd never heard of, never seen. And it's like, again, for me, if you couldn't talk, if you didn't cut a good promo, I didn't care about you. So most of the stuff that was on any of these tapes, I couldn't give a crap about. So no, I was definitely not into that. I was very much into mainstream wrestling.
Do you think podcasts are kind of the new tape trading?
That depends on where you're looking. Maybe this is part of the tape trading podcast. I'm not sure, but I mean, I don't know. If you look at like a Joe Rogan or something, that's so damn mainstream. It might as well just be a radio show. I guess you could say that because most of it is kind of like word of mouth. Half the time you don't even know about them until like you come across somebody who's like, hey, have you ever heard of this? It's like, oh yeah. Hey, cool. Yeah. Let me listen to that.
When I started podcast, I started in 2009. I started doing this before Mark Maron did. So that's like how early in the podcasting game I was doing fantasy football. And when I started doing it, I didn't tell anybody. It was like I was almost ashamed of it. Like, oh God, everybody's going to think I'm a podcaster. Are you kind of like that now? Because look, you're Eli Drake. You have a certain aura about you, and here you are now doing a podcast. Which, it was a fight to even talk you into it. I'm not even going to lie. It's true though.
Well, okay, so for years and years and years in my 20s, I was a restaurant server in just about any restaurant you can ever name. I probably served there to kind of supplant my burgeoning wrestling career. And in all that time, a lot of times as I'd be doing my introductions to the table, a lot of people tell me like, "You've got a great radio voice. You should go into radio." But I listen a lot to like Howard Stern. I used to listen to Tom Likas when he was on the radio, different guys like that. And and they would just basically talk about how like the radio industry basically is dead. And it really is. I mean, if you look at how much money these radio companies are bleeding, it's crazy. But here are two guys who were successful what they did. They were able to, have their own audiences or whatever. I think Tom Leykis is doing like some paywall podcast at this point. But Howard Stern is, Sirius XM now with, man, I think when he first got there, they might have had like 3 million subscribers. Now they have like over 40 million or something like that. I don't even know what the number is, but it's something crazy. But you always hear him make fun of podcasts all the time. So I'm thinking like, man, people always tell me I should do a podcast. I've kind of wanted to do a podcast, but I'm like, maybe it is kind of hacky. I don't know. So there's like two me's when it comes to thinking about podcasts. Cause I'm like, that'd be great. Maybe I should do it. But then I'm like, it's kind of oversaturated. Everybody seems to have damn podcasts now. But at the same time, it was like, screw it. Just might as well do it. But here was the thing. Before I ever did this, and you were kind of giving me the pitch, I still haven't really gotten to this point yet, but I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and I was just like, look, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it for real. And like, I'm going to talk freely and just be me the best I can. And I don't think I've still gotten to that comfort yet to really let that fly. But when that comes, I know I'm probably going to annoy some people, but at the same time, I'm probably going to endear myself to a lot more. But I just feel like I need to be as authentic as I can be. And like I said, I'm not sure that I've still gotten there yet because I'm still kind of feeling this whole thing out.
I think there has to be a certain level of trust too. And this is a little inside baseball for fans. And I think it's an interesting conversation here where you also have to trust me to know that I'm not leading you down a line to just get you in trouble or to get a podcast headline. You have to, if there's a conversation and we're going down it with the best intentions, not with, all right, what can I get Eli to say this week that I can get the dirt sheets to pick up on? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for the most part, when I am about to say something that I know is going to ruffle some feathers, I usually know it in the moment. Sometimes I don't always know that it's going to be as impactful as it was. But I think there was literally only one time ever where I had to call a guy and just be like, hey, before you put this out, I need you to pull this off. And it was only because I had revealed something about a product that I wasn't supposed to reveal. And I didn't even realize that I did it. I was just blindly talking and telling this guy about, this and this and this. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, I can't say that. And so I had to be like, hey, remember that part? We got to get rid of that real quick. But otherwise, for the most part, like I try to be, it's probably a disadvantage to me in my career, if I'm honest, but again, for the last probably 15 plus years of listening to guys like Howard Stern, Tom Leykis, et cetera, these guys speak very freely and like close to the hip in a sense to where they just kind of say what's on their mind. And I feel like there's a certain value in that. Even though that sometimes maybe hurts my career or something like that, I also feel like I'm big on having like integrity in that certain sense that I don't want to sell out to myself. So I do want to be the realest version of me. Now, whether that angers people or maybe it hurts me in some long run, in a weird way, I think I'd just rather be me.
I like that. That's actually a very in-depth answer because I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm like, well, I know what you mean. I try to look. People don't come to the wrestling perspective to listen to me. When I came up with the formula, I quickly realized that you can throw a rock and hit somebody who thinks they're a wrestling expert, someone who thinks they're a dirt sheet guy. Look, I'm not an expert. I'm a dirt sheet guy. I'm a fan, and I enjoy talking to people and making friends. I'll be honest. Like, I like making friends. And now that you're in the podcast game, which is weird that now I'm interviewing you now on your own podcast. I think it's become that. And I almost kind of like having a public forum here to do the Inside Baseball Talk on the show because you and I, we're not super like, hey, what'd you have for lunch today? We're not there yet. It's like, what day you want to record? Tuesday, good, sounds good. And it's like, do I? I don't want to text them just to bug them, even though I know you would probably be like, all right, I will entertain them. I'm drinking coffee. Have a good day. But I'm in my
I mean, and sometimes I'm the worst at responding to texts. Like sometimes I'll see them and I'll just be like, all right, I'll get back to that at some point, and then I'll completely forget.
So here we are on our podcast, and we've never really discussed where we want this thing to go. I want it to be different than what Petey and I did, because you're definitely different than Petey and different insight. Do we want to interview people? Because I think sometimes a little bit of it's good. I know some Hollywood guys that like wrestling. The guys from Super Trooper and Beer Fest, and I'm sure some wrestling guys that would probably do it because they're friends of yours. I mean, every once in a while I'd be like, Pete, why don't you get the Young Bucks on? All right, I'll go get the Young Bucks on, and I'm like talking to the Young Bucks. Are there wrestlers that you find yourself maybe, and it's not a knock to them if you're like, nah, I don't care, but do you find yourself maybe thinking about how interesting it could be to interview somebody?
I guess there are some times where I might have questions about things where it would be an interesting way to get some answers and to get some conversation going. I can't think of anybody offhand necessarily, but it's not something I'm opposed to. I was actually thinking, and I don't even know if we have the capabilities to do this, although I think we do, maybe periodically doing like a live show where we would take calls. Is that a possibility now that we're brainstorming on the air as we speak?
Absolutely it is.
I feel like that could be wacky, off the wall. We'll probably get really dumb calls, some really good calls, and I could have a field day with that.
I am down. I think that's like a special 10th show anniversary. Like, oh, it's 10 shows. Eli stuck around. Yay! Say hi to him.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Because honestly,
I mean, that's assuming we have more than 3 listeners. So
we barely have more than 3 listeners. I am actually.
Wow. Gotta start somewhere.
I'm happy with where we are and how the show's gone, and we'll wrap this thing up, because I'll be honest, before we got on, I said, Eli, there's not much news to talk about this week. And you're kind of like, just hit record and we'll talk. And here we are at the end of the show, and it felt like we just started.
Well, I do have a one thing to bring up, though.
Let's do it.
I'm just, okay, so now there's NXT, that just happened. AEW is coming on, next week? Is that next week or 2 weeks?
October 4th or something. I don't know. Okay.
So what do you think that there's really going to be a big ratings war with that?
I'm glad you asked me that. Here's my thought on it, because the industry is so different from back in the day where one had to die and one had to survive. WWE has kind of created their own ecosystem where if the ratings dipped, they could either go to the network, or they have enough revenue from 1 million things that they have their fingertips in that they can continue on as business as usual. So I think from the aspect of one show's going to die off, I don't think that there's going to be that kind of war. I think the industry's different, where wrestlers no longer view people as competition. Like if you hear all the old stories about how, the WWE guys didn't want WCW guys in the locker room, I think that's dead and gone. With AEW and all these other places out there now, everybody are so much friends right now. It'd be welcoming, even if one place had to shut the door, they'd be like, oh, Jimmy, come on in. So I don't think from that aspect that there's going to be a war. I think if there's a war, it's going to be from the fans.
Yeah, but no, what I mean, though, is do you think that AEW is even going to put up a number in comparison?
Boy, maybe the first show or two. And
I think the opposite.
Why?
I think that AEW is going to be a slow build, if anything, because I think that for the most part, well, actually, I will tell you this, though, at least Jericho's out there doing more publicity. I guess he's going to be on Dance with the Stars or something like that. or maybe he already was, or what show was it? Oh, America's Got Talent.
Yes.
I'm sorry, wrong show.
Yeah.
I don't know when that might have already happened at this point. I'm not even sure. And I guess he was on some other TV show, something, put it out there somewhere. So that's probably going to help. But at the same time, AEW's fan base right now is still like the indie fans. And I don't know. Let me give you an example. On 2013, I was on The Hero with The Rock. The Rock, the biggest box office success in over the last 3 or 4 years. Always the top selling actor, like 3 or 4 years in a row now. We were on TNT, the same channel that AEW is going to be on. They were expecting to do maybe 1.5 to 2 million a week. We cracked just over 1 million, I think, on the first couple episodes, and by like episode 4 or 5, it was always less than 1 million. So that's with The Rock at the helm. Maybe it wasn't enough Rock, I'm not sure, but I don't know if there's enough star power for an unknown show to come in with this hotness that I think, and this isn't a knock at them, just from a realistic look, I don't know that they're going to come in and just be blazing from the start. Especially now with WWE having NXT on Wednesdays, when they're on what's essentially been known as the wrestling channel for like the last 30 years. Like USA has historically been the wrestling channel. I don't like if AEW does start to get a foothold. I think it's going to be a while. I don't think they're going to come out of the gates blazing. I could be wrong.
I think the momentum and everybody wants to see this so bad that there's going to be an initial push of fans. I mean, I don't.
Well, you're saying everybody within the wrestling industry, but I'm saying how many fans are that really? Like how many fans really? I mean, like for instance, like WWE has a lot of casual fans. So like, how many hardcore wrestling fans are in their audience? So then, how many hardcore fans are actually in the country that are going to be watching it? I don't know that it's enough to really make a big number. And I could be wrong, but I don't think it is.
I don't think you're terribly wrong with that thinking. I guess I look at it from everything that these guys set out to do has been somewhat record-breaking for where they are in the industry. Now, look, 10,000 fans.
Without a doubt.
Everybody's done it. But for them, they consistently do 10,000 fans. Was it the same 10,000 fans? I don't know. Is it, 3,000 of the same fans and a whole bunch of new ones wherever they go? I can't tell you. But I think that there's going to be that initial curiosity of, all right, what's the presentation going to look like? What's the stage going to look like? Because for me, more than anything, and this might make me sound horrible or petty, but I'm a stage snob. I need my television show to look different from my pay-per-views.
Yes.
I need and that's my problem with WWE Impact for a lot of times. And that's what I hope. And I know NWA will be, balling on a budget here, but I hope that they'll try to do just enough to make that stage feel different from television to pay-per-view. You don't have to make it a total different pay-per-view stage every single time, but for me to think that to buy into a pay-per-view, if I didn't have the WWE Network and I had to buy the pay-per-views, and let's say I woke up out of a coma and watched a Raw, a SmackDown, and bought a pay-per-view with the same stage, I'd be livid.
They look identical.
So
that's always been a little detail for me that's always kind of bothered me, because the only one that looks any different is WrestleMania. And that's only because it's usually in a bigger stadium or something like that. But for the most part, they all have almost the identical stage setup. Everything's the same. And I don't know, like I can remember since I was a kid, they always looked very different when it was a pay-per-view than when it was just regular TV.
Yeah, and I think that's a lost art. And it doesn't have to be something massive. I don't need to see Halloween Havoc, with just make it just a little bit different. It doesn't have to be Bash at the Beach different to Halloween Havoc to Great American Bash, just a little bit. Show me that you're trying to make your pay-per-view feel like a pay-per-view. And I guess where I'm going with that is that's where, for me at least, AEW's true test will be, you know what, the show and the presentation might be good. I want it to be a little bit gritty. I want it to be a little bit, old school WCW. I love the WWE product, but it's too fine tuned.
What do you mean old school and gritty in what way?
Well, like maybe the arena.
WCW in what way?
Just a little bit darker, a little bit not so refined. I'm okay with seeing the cameraman here or there. You know how just WCW felt like it was just a step below production value from WWE?
Yeah.
I like that, and I want that.
Yeah, see, I've talked about that before, even with Raw. When Raw was on back in like 97, 98, it was literally just the big Titantron, big red curtain, and a ramp and a stage, and that was it. And it was literally Raw. And now it's very, very cooked. It is not Raw whatsoever. It's so overly produced. The guys do like the weird fight camera angles and the shaky camera when things are going crazy. It's like too much. Let me just watch what's happening. But you said that might be AEW's biggest challenge. I think AEW's biggest challenge is finding their identity, because I'm not sure they still know who they are yet. And I think part of that's because there are a few different camps in there and a few different thought processes as to what is what. And one of the biggest things that jumps out at me is me remembering when they did that buy-in, the casino battle royal.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all these goofy people in there, and the guy that didn't have any legs and all that stuff. And that's cool. But here's the thing, like, I don't know if this is what one of the commentators actually said, but I remember, I think it was Jim Cornette or somebody said that one of the commentators said that everyone gets an opportunity here at AEW. Did he say that? Do you remember?
You know what? I didn't see it.
Doesn't matter, but doesn't matter. But looking at that battle royal, it looks like everybody gets a chance. But if you're calling yourselves all elite, everyone doesn't get a chance. Is it elite? Or is it everyone gets a chance?
I like that. And I don't want it to feel like everybody really does. I want the top of the guys to be at the top. And I want people to earn it. The one thing many years ago with Jinder Mahal, where he started out in WWE as a jobber, and then he won like a special match, and all of a sudden he's a champion out of nowhere. That was kind of a cool moment and a cool feel. Whether you thought he could wrestle or not, that's not the argument. It was the fact that for just a brief second, they made you feel like anything can happen. And when it comes down to AEW now, I think that's how they keep fans is, bringing it back, dialing the production back. Don't make it feel like it's too polished. Nobody wants that. And if they can really make you buy into that and watch it, I think people will come back. But I also think that fans are so fickle that they only have one or two shows before they lose people if they don't put out a top-notch product.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, at the same time, you could have people possibly at some point come back and check in, because if you look at WWE, for instance, I mean, now people I think are starting to tune out a little bit here and there. You see the ratings going down, but so many times you see people complaining about the show, but they just keep taking it in, and they'll complain again, and they'll keep watching and they'll complain again. But to your point of being polished but not too polished, I think the way that I would put it is like, if you go to somebody's house and it's clean, you like it. But if they're like obsessively clean and every time you set something on the table, they're like, this place is a mess, you don't want that. And I feel like that's kind of what WWE's become, where it's too polished. The house is too clean. Like, it's okay to maybe, set your empty coffee mug on the table. It's not a big deal. Just polish it, make it look good, make it look clean, but don't overdo it.
Yeah, I agree. There's that, I guess we had family friends come over once, and my wife had said, "Oh man, I'm sorry I didn't get to clean up for you guys." And they said I'd have felt, I guess, insulted if you did, because we're friends. And that's kind of what I want my wrestling to be is, hey, look, you know what? It happens. It's not perfect. Come enjoy it anyways. And I guess since you brought this up, I have to ask you, do you know anything about the NWA production, how it's going to be, any directions that they're going that you can talk about now? I know it's guarded. tight-lipped, and you may know, but you can't say. I'm not trying for that kind of stuff, but the feel of the show, how they're going, are they going old school NWA, or are they doing it with a twist?
I gotta tell you what, since this is my show, this is our show, I'm gonna give you a scoop right now. I'm gonna make this known worldwide right now. I don't know anything. I know nothing. I don't involve myself in any of it. I work for them, and I don't really ask many questions beyond that, other than what's my call time, where's my hotel, and that's about it. So if they wanted me to be in on that or whatever, I'm sure they would tell me. And if I wanted to know, I'm sure I'd ask. But at this point, I'm just kind of trusting the fact that Billy seems to know what he's doing, Lagana seems to know what he's doing, and I'm going to let them do the thing and not bother them while they're doing it.
I'm going to ask you, because let's wrap this up, but do you go out and get a picture with Billy Corgan?
No, I've got pictures with him just by being on TV with him. So for the couple of the segments that we did back in 2016, we shared a ring or a backstage area or whatever together on camera. So it's like my picture's already been taken.
Oh, Eli, I come on, one for me, do it for me. Go, Billy. Billy, look, it's a monumental night. You've got Eli.
Well, actually, I was at his birthday party 2 years ago, and I have a picture. Well, it wasn't just me, but it was like me, C3, what's his name, Sandow, and a couple other people. We all got a picture with him then. So I mean, I got my picture then too.
Does it blow your mind how big of a wrestling fan he is?
Yeah, I mean, it always seems to be a little bit surprising because, wrestling's always kind of tongue-in-cheek for a lot of people, especially mainstream. But then again, once you actually talk to him, you get it. You follow.
Maybe I'll reach out to somebody who works in NWA so we can interview him once.
You should do that.
I'll reach out. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll see if I know anybody.
Oh, good. All right. Let's end this podcast. This is like a marathon. We went over an hour here. Eli, where are you going to be? Where do you want people to find you?
Look at us going over an hour and we had nothing to talk about.
Nothing. I think this is the best shows when we do this.
So you can't plan too much. Let's just talk. Where am I going to be? You know where I'm going to be?
No.
Well, I know where you're not.
How
am I supposed to tell you?
You're not going to be hanging out with me anytime soon. I mean, I am. If I want to make the trek to Baltimore,
I'm not going to be hanging out with you anytime soon. You're correct, because you are way up there in the north. I'm going to be at Masters of the Ring this Saturday in, Kenansville, North Carolina. It's going to be myself taking on Mr. Ken Anderson.
All right.
And then I'll have the following week to just kind of get myself all prepped and ready to go, because Atlanta, the NWA, and Eli Drake are coming at ya. Couple days of TV tapings at the GBP Studios? Is that what it's called?
Sounds right.
Hell yeah, it is. Yeah. So we're gonna be doing that, and I think I have a new T-shirt out at ProWrestlingTees.com/Eli Drake, and of course you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at the Eli Drake.
Do we know yet what network or television stations NWA will be on? I did get that question to ask you.
All right, I'm going to give you a scoop.
You don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. The only thing I know, the only thing I can tell you for certain,
Flight 187.
is that I'm trusting in the certain fact that, again, you're looking at a guy in Billy Corgan who is a musical icon. And I think that carries some weight as far as when he's negotiating deals and production and distribution and all that. So I'm trusting in the fact that we're going to get all of this done, filmed, and it will be distributed in the largest possible viewing platform that we can find.
All right. Listen. Oh, you know what we should do? Let's do a quick Blue Chew ad real quick. Let's not make it awkward this time, all right?
Don't do that.
I'm going to do my best. Eli, you and this show is brought to you by Blue Chew. Head over to BlueChew.com. Use the promo code Perspective. With that promo code, Eli Drake himself will send you a free order of Blue Chew. You just pay shipping and handling because, Eli, you'll do anything for love, but you won't do that. Did I make it odd yet?
Not yet. The meatloaf's cooking in my oven as we speak.
Okay, I like that you caught that. But listen, Blue Chew is amazing. It works. It's made with the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know it works. It's done online, so there's no more awkward doctor visits. It's almost like this. I mean, Eli, would you ever imagine doing this podcast in the same room as me? No, it'd be awkward.
Be a little weird. Yeah, I don't know if I could look at you that long. But yeah, I'm going to send you your free Blue Chew because I've got a whole stack of them sitting right here in my living room. I'm chewing on them all day and night.
Let's be honest with ourselves, and I think you lied to the fans.
I'm rock hard right now.
Well, no.
I'm sorry, what?
I love it. There. It works for Eli, and he doesn't even need it. It's just like recreation for him. It's like
That's right.
sexual steroids. But the only reason why you actually had to move out of your apartment is all those boxes of Blue Chew that you're waiting to ship out to the fans.
Yeah. Yeah, it flooded my walls. I had so much Blue Chew.
Oh boy, so many jokes. I'm not even going to go there. BlueChew.com, use the promo code Perspective. Don't forget Wrestling Perspective Podcast.com, use the promo code. Wait, but that's the wrong one. I'm going back into Blue Chew. Shit.
Oh boy.
Use Wrestling Perspective Podcast.com. That's where you can rate, subscribe, get all your podcasts. Anywhere you get podcasts, that's where we are. Follow Eli on Twitter at the Eli Drake. Follow me at Dennis77Farrell and Wrestling Perspective at WP_pod. And I believe your Instagram's the same, right?
Yeah. Am I still not following you?
No. Good. Listen, let's get back. What do I need to do to make this follow thing happen?
Nothing. I wanted to keep it that way. I just wanted to make sure I still wasn't following you.
You still haven't. I haven't even tricked you into following me yet, and it hurts. It hurts.
You know what? You know what will end up happening? I don't know how this happens all the time, but I'll find that my Instagram or my Twitter will just randomly start following people that I've never heard of, never seen. Somehow they'll just show up on my feed, and I'm like, when the hell did I follow this person? So who knows? Maybe you'll be part of that lucky patch.
It can't be any weirder than when Josh Matthews blocked me on Twitter and then blamed it on his kid.
What?
Yeah. Oh,
of course.
Listen, you're not a fantasy football guy, are you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, good. Then I don't have
I heard his kid really hates you, though, so that makes sense.
I get him this fantasy football belt. We'll wrap this up and send everybody home.
Major kid heat.
I don't know why. I don't know why. But I get him this belt, and I'm like, hey, can I take a picture of you? I'll post it on Twitter. He's like, oh, absolutely. So I went to tag him in the tweet. I'm blocked, and I walk over to him. I said, hey, man, did I make you mad? Is there any heat that you're not telling me? No, buddy, what's wrong? I said, well, I went to tweet you and you got me blocked. He's like, oh, I give my phone to my kid. My kid will go in and just start randomly blocking people. And by randomly blocking people, just me probably.
He must have said some foul shit.
I like it. All right, guys, Wrestling Perspective. We'll see you next week.